last year we revealed a clip I'm about to show you of Anthony Albanese in his younger years passionately condemning what he called Israel's occupation of Palestine. Now, as you can see, he yells into a microphone at a pro-Palestinian protest. Have a look.
The response of Israel has been to meet children throwing rocks with helicopter gunships, with tanks and with missiles.
Now, according to far-left news site Crikey, the clip that we broadcast was of Albanese at a pro-Palestinian protest during the Second Intifada in October 2000. And Anthony Albanese was not a student, but already a politician. Now, Crikey, coming at this issue from a completely different perspective to us on Sky News, ran a report on Saturday that Albanese attended that protest outside the US consulate and that both American and Israeli flags were burned. They reported, and I quote, "At Martin Place, where the US consulate was located at the time, a group of some 20 men broke from a 2,500-strong crowd of protesters and tried to storm the building," news agency AFP reported. Sections of the crowd chanted slogans calling for a pan-Arab jihad, or holy war, to push the Israelis out of disputed lands. Despite appeals from their leaders for calm, a group of about 50 protesters set fire to Israeli and US flags. The story added chants of free Palestine and God is great drowned out several speakers, including an Australian Member of Parliament. And they say that was Albanese. This is quite explosive because it explains why Albanese has been so reluctant to unequivocally condemn the aggressive protests we've seen. It explains why he didn't come out swinging in defence of the Jewish community after the Opera House protests on October 9, when, as you know, the mob chanted "Where's the Jews?" and worse, and burned flags, while police told Jews to stay at home. And Jews were meant to be attending a vigil for the terror attacks at the Opera House that very night, with the sails lit blue and white. And now we learn that Albanese, as an MP, not a student, was at a protest during the Second Intifada where God is great was chanted and flags were burned. I've played this clip many times, but now Crikey has tracked down the protest where Albanese said it. Have a look again.
The response of Israel has been to meet children throwing rocks with helicopter gunships, with tanks and with missiles.
Now, Crikey reports that he attended more protests in the next few weeks. This is massive. The Second Intifada, where there were suicide bombings in Israel and serious threats to Jewish institutions in Australia. And Albanese was among the anti-Israel protesters. He was an MP at the time and made similar remarks in Parliament.
Palestinians must be given their homeland. The occupation of Gaza, the West Bank and East Jerusalem by the Israelis has created generations of oppressed people. While many Israelis continue to demonise all Palestinians as terrorists, Palestinians experience Israelis as occupiers and employers of cheap labour, interrogators and jailers. Meanwhile, the government of Israel continues to allow fundamentalists to build illegal settlements on Palestinian land.
Let's bring in now Shadow Home Affairs Minister James Paterson. James, I think this revelation is extremely significant. What do you think?
I completely agree with you, Sharri. Most Australians probably assumed that the Prime Minister's response, inadequate response since the 7th October of rising anti-Semitism in our country, was just due to the fact that he's a weak Prime Minister. But actually, I think what you've demonstrated is that deep down he has hatred for Israel, a deep-seated hatred which goes back decades. And what we're seeing here is that secret hatred bubbling to the surface and manifesting in his policies today. I think he's the most anti-Israel Prime Minister we have ever ever had in this country, at least since the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. And no wonder he has failed to rally to the Jewish community in its hour of need. No wonder he's abandoned Israel at international forums and in public debate. And no wonder so many Jewish Australians feel so abandoned at this critical time.
Do you think this explains why he couldn't strongly and unequivocally condemn the Opera House and other similar aggressive and violent protests because he was at a similar protest where flags were burned?
Anthony Albanese's whole history as a politician is to appeal to extremists like the people you've seen at those rallies. He has been to those rallies, he's addressed those rallies, his policies and rhetoric seeks to appease the people who go to those rallies. And I think he deep down has a lot of sympathy with their perspective. Let's remember that in recent times, in fact, in just the last parliament when he was in opposition, he went all the way to the United Kingdom to spend time with Jeremy Corbyn and posted selfies with him on social media in the middle of the UK Labor Party's unprecedented anti-Semitism crisis. Keir Starmer is trying to clean up the anti-Semitism of the Jeremy Corbyn era and expel those people from the modern Labor Party in the UK, including Jeremy Corbyn. But Anthony Albanese thought it was a good idea to post smiling selfies with him. I mean, I think this really does show that extreme anti-Israel hatred that lies underneath the surface of these policies.
OK, we're going to continue to cover this and investigate Albanese's past stories I first reported in the lead up to the last election. Now, Andrew Giles has claimed that drones were being used to track down released immigration detainees. He's now come out today conceding that actually this isn't true. James Paterson, the fact that the Prime Minister continues to protect his immigration minister despite so many failures that would have cost anyone else their job really questions what is going on here, why the Prime Minister is refusing to take leadership and move him out of this portfolio.
Sharri, things have got so bad here in Canberra that we have a Minister for Immigration who is publicly hallucinating about an imaginary secret drone surveillance program which his department has never been running as a justification and a defence for his failure to ensure that the law is enforced and that all the released detainees are wearing ankle bracelets. What prompted him to make this admission to Kieran Gilbert was the fact that at least 2 of the former murderers and 26 of the former sex offenders are free in the community without ankle bracelets, despite him promising otherwise. And all he could come up with is, oh, we're secretly monitoring them with drones, which turns out not to be the case at all. Now, this is a pretty shocking attempt to mislead the Australian people. He said this on Thursday. His office repeated it to journalists on Friday, Saturday and Sunday. And the Minister for Agriculture, Murray Watt, was on Insiders on Sunday, still maintaining that drones had been used in some capacity. And 15 minutes before question time today, they had to reluctantly admit that Andrew Giles had just imagined this all in a feverish dream.
Look, it's quite the scandal. I'm going to come back to this drone issue later in the show when I bring in my political panel. James Paterson, thank you very much for joining me.